All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Stoker. I'm the president of Firearm Owners Against Crime Institute for Legal, Legislative, and Educational Action. I have with me tonight Vice President Clint Macro. Clint, say hi.
Hi, how's everybody doing tonight?
So we've been talking. We decided to put together kind of a casual sit-down podcast, just where we go over some of the topics of what's happening with the Second Amendment or Article 1, Section 21 here in Pennsylvania, and get some word out and get some education out there for some folks in the Commonwealth that may or may not be members of our organization and engaged in this fight with the anti-Constitution crowd, as I like to refer to it. So we've got some things we wanted to go over with everyone, kind of bring everybody up to date. One of the big topics that we just pushed a lawsuit further in Harrisburg. We're going to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and appealing to them. For those that don't know, the background check system was very bogged down last year. And in May of 2022, our organization filed a lawsuit using some members of the organization here who were directly affected by the delays in the background check system. And the problems that we were seeing were delays in the background check system would run anywhere from, maybe 3 to 4 hours to 15, 20 hours if it went overnight, and I'm sure you were affected by that, Clint, as I was. Getting any, I run an FFL here in my own place, and getting background checks through, it's a shame. You'd have a customer, maybe drive an hour to come see you because they like to work just with you or in the privacy, the way you do things. And then you had to send them home because the background check system was so delayed. They basically had a 24-hour hold period they were waiting for to find out if they were even approved to get a firearm, which in some cases, I don't know about you, but I mean, you're talking about people that were licensed dealers that had to wait, people that are, already their background checks are done routinely. And I mean, I have a license to sell a firearm, and I've got to wait 17 hours to be told I can actually take the firearm out of my own inventory and put it in my own vault. So
yeah. And you obviously weren't the only one that had that occur. I train a lot of instructors in different ranges, and most of those ranges that I train at have FFLs, and the ones in Pennsylvania all echoed that same kind of story that you're talking about. And to be completely open and honest, I was not affected by that because I actually didn't buy a gun for quite a while, actually. And the time I did, it didn't affect me. And I don't have an FFL, but these guys were losing business like you were. And someone decides that they ultimately want to arm themselves to protect themselves and their family, and they take that life-changing step to buy that gun and exercise that right, and they pick out the gun that they want to use, and they get advice on which one is the best one to get, and then they go to do their background check, and it's like spinning wheel of death, like on your computer, man. Like that's wrong.
Very discouraging. Yeah, very discouraging.
Yeah, I believe when you were testifying, they had asked something about what the word instant means, and what was your response about that?
Yeah, so the attorney general that was actually defending the Commonwealth on the case, because we sued the chairman of the state police directly, which you can only do if you can show that they violated a statute. And the court ruled that the delays in the system were a violation of statute, and since he's responsible for the firearms unit, that he was in violation, so we could sue him. And the attorney general that was on the case actually provided a rundown of every background check I had done for a year and a half, and showed my average delay on background checks, instead of being instant, somewhere within probably maybe the 5-minute period, I guess we'd consider instant, was actually 2 hours and 13 minutes was the average delay. At first, he objected to me using his own exhibit against him in court. And of course, our attorney, Josh Prince, was just lighting it up, knew all the right questions to ask, But when they cross-examined me, the attorney general actually said, "No, sir, I don't understand, Mr. Stoker. Your delays are 2 hours and 13 minutes. Is that worth getting upset about?" And I actually looked at the judge and I said, "Can I answer that in 2 hours and 13 minutes and see how he feels?" And he didn't. I object. He didn't care for that answer. And
I would have loved to have seen that.
Oh, we had Judge McCullough, and she's great, and she sat up there and she looked at him and shrugged and said, he has a point. That's not instant. That's, in our opinion, that was, curbing people's constitutional rights. So after Judge McCullough, she initiated a preliminary injunction, in September on the case. The background check delays went away. They went away for retailers. The entire rest of the year, the only time we saw any type of delay was over Thanksgiving. There was about a 3-hour delay.
I find that interesting because did the state police, like the next day, hire a whole bunch of people to fill the void that they had there?
Yeah, we kind of made the joke that somebody found the router was unplugged, you know.
Yeah.
But no,
It
I
sure
think we
seems like
found
that was the case, right? Yeah.
that they could just instantly fix it, right?
Yeah.
So I think we found out what the problem was. I talked with Deputy Foster down at Allegheny County's firearms unit at an event not too long ago. And right about the same time our delays went away, the license to carry firearms background checks went into a bog down. He said they moved to a crawl. So what I think they did was they reallocated operators to focus more on the retail side, you know, on the FFL side. You know, it stunned us. Lieutenant Keeler, who heads the firearms unit, testified in court that the background checks they do, they check the first three letters of your first name and the first three letters of your last name, and they run that nationwide. So, you know, in some people's, I mean, yours obviously, KLIMAC, that's not going to be super common. But what if your name was, you know, Joe Johnson? So every Joe Johnson across the United States that's prohibited is going to send a hit back. And that's when the operator gets involved. They don't use your demographics to narrow it down first. You know, they get all those hits, then they use your demographics to narrow it down. So, yeah, we were kind of stunned by that. And she flat out said it right on the stand. That's how they did it. None of us had ever heard that before. So unfortunately for us, when Judge McCullough she recused herself from the case to pursue the Supreme Court position. We got another judge, Judge Ledbetter, and that judge is not so Second Amendment friendly and issued a couple orders basically throwing out the injunction and dismissing our case, stating that we didn't really have any standing, that there was nothing to complain about. So we have now, you know, Josh, our attorney, looked at that and went, that's nuts. I mean, how could you even say that there's nothing to look at here? And he filed to make an amended appeal. They would not allow it. So this past week, we agreed, you know, as an organization to press forward, knowing the money that we're spending, put it up to the Supreme Court, and let's take it and fight it. And we're not going to roll over and let that stand, because then what happens? Then the state police can just burden our background checks with all the delays they want. Yeah. We found out they've got a $4 million surplus, I think. They're supposed to have 72 employees. At the time they had, I think, 58. So there's a lot going on there that they could do to resolve that situation.
Oh, that tar pit runs deep, because when you were talking about the license to carry doing the background checks, I recall years ago, Kim Stolfer, our previous president, was talking about originally when that was put into place, using the PIC system for the background check process. There was supposed to be a particular amount of money. I believe it was $5 per transaction, or there was money per transaction. It was supposed to be set aside for a slush fund for sheriff's departments for their license to carry infrastructure. And at the time, Kim was like, I don't know where that money is. We couldn't find it. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of controversy when it comes to the state police and this background check system. And traditionally, Jason Ortite, I always say his name wrong, and I feel bad that I said that. He put forth a bill the last couple of years to get rid of the PIC system, and I believe that's being picked up by another legislator this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, Valerie Gatos, Representative Gatos, from right up north here in Moon Township, right next door to Jason Ortite's district. She's picking that up and running with that now. I don't know. The funding is always in question. You know, if they've got $4 million set aside to hire these employees, and it can only be used according to the directives, it can only be used for staff to fill those positions. Has that become a slush fund for something else the state police needs? I don't want to level an allegation against them, but fix the system. You know, so they were able to fix it. And ironically, about a week ago, I actually took a couple screenshots. For the first time since Thanksgiving last year, I started to see background check delays again. They were advertising a 1.5 hour delay on background checks. And the first thing, you know, being defensive about it, the first thing that jumped to my mind was, maybe they miscalculated and they thought we didn't file in time so they can just do what they want. Well, now we've issued that filing, and I haven't seen any. You know, they might not even know the filing's been made yet. It was only a few days ago. Yeah. But now I haven't seen it. Could be
circumstantial, but or maybe someone just tripped and kicked the cable out of the damn router again.
Got an IP conflict. Nobody can run a background check.
Yeah, someone needs to take some gaff tape down to the state headquarters and tape that wire down.
So it's another thing we need to actually get out there though for folks, is they need to understand how expensive these lawsuits are. Yeah, absolutely. And the funding that we have.
What have we spent close to, rounded out on that particular case? Because we have a lot of different litigation going on at the same time. But with that one, what are we at right now?
Yeah, I believe we're over $45,000 invested in that one. The AR-15 band from Peduto in the city of Pittsburgh, the Gainey is swearing he's going to take back up. We've got over $100,000 invested in that one.
Yeah.
It's incredible, but you have to remember how deep, like the brief that our attorney here, Josh Prince, just filed on this case is over 600 pages long till you go over the entire record. So then you've got to have, he was talking about the copying expenses. Fortunately, the Supreme Court changed their filing requirements. Mm-hmm. If we had been with the old filing requirements that were up until just recently, we'd had $1,100 just in printing costs at Staples just to turn in all the proper paperwork to file the lawsuit.
Yeah, in years past with Firearms Owners Against Crime and Allegheny County Sportsman's League, anything that went to the Supreme Court, I was amazed at how much it used to cost for printing. It was like, it had to be a very specific format, and there was like only one or two printers that did it. And of course, they charged out the nose for it. Sure. So equal justice to all it just kind of depends on how deep your pockets are, it would seem.
And we're fortunate we do enough work with Josh. He gives us a bit of a discounted rate on it. I mean, he could, for an attorney of his talent, he could definitely take a lot more from us than he does. So
absolutely,
it matters to him. But we've got the PSP over background checks. We're still trying to go after that. The Lower Merion, we just filed a lawsuit against Lower Merion they're trying to zone out FFLs in Lower Merion, and they say they're not. They're just controlling where they go. But if you look at the map, they've practically zoned them out. They're treating them like some communities treat strip clubs. Yeah. You can only have it in certain areas, and you have to be more than 1,000 feet from a school and XYZ. And when we actually looked at the map, one of our members, Grant Schmidt, is out there running Shot Tech, is training and firearms company out there in Lower Merion, and he's directly affected by it. So we stepped up to the plate with that and filed a lawsuit. But I bet we've already got $7,000-8,000 into it. We haven't even seen a courtroom yet. So it's
this is the second time that Firearms Owners Against Crime has sued
Lower Merion. Yeah. And you want to go after them and say, by rights, shouldn't they should know they can't do this. They've already been told by a court you can't do this. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't we be able to go after them and make them pay for the attorney's fees or some punitive damages? And I guess because of the way preemption was originally written and the fact that they're actually using a different methodology to go after it, you can't punish them saying they should know better. So the courts won't really entertain it. I'd beat up Josh all the time. Find a way to let us get money out of them for it to cover our expenses. And, he tells you, I'd love to. I would if I could, but there's just no avenue out there until we get that strengthening preemption bill through, which we're going to have to try to push again.
We did get it through, but thanks to Governor Wolf at the time.
And we good old Governor Wolf. Huh?
Yeah, and we just didn't quite have the numbers to overturn that veto, or at least people weren't willing to belly up to the bar on it.
Well, and we won't now either with the anti-constitutionalist crowd running the House. So we need to flip that script by getting all the sportsmen out to vote this year, get them out there to the polls, take the House back, and then we need to activate everybody. We've got all these sportsmen's groups. You and I talk quite frequently about getting out there and visiting the individual members of Allegheny County Sportsmen's or Beaver County or all these other places that we can go. And we're trying. I mean, we're going out to Mill Creek near Lancaster. We were out at Langhorne recently over by Ben Salem, all the way over by Philly. We're reaching out to these other organizations and getting out there and educating who we can, just trying to spur that, get everybody to the polls, and let's win some of these districts back so we can strengthen preemption and make this stuff stop. And I think some of these organizations, these little small feudal systems out there, they think they can do what they want. They're just going to try to bleed us dry financially. So we need to do what we can to pick up, we need to solicit some of the big corporations. We need to solicit FFLs. Hey, if you want to be able to fight for your rights here in Pennsylvania, this is the way to do it. It's, I like to say, God bless the NRA and GOA at the national level, but in Pennsylvania, if you want something done, it's us. So we need to start showing some funding from that, and we're the ones making a difference for these folks.
And interesting enough that you brought that up, because of our restructuring over the last 2 years, now that we are Institute for Legal, Legislative, and Educational Action, we can take donations from corporations and companies now, whereas before that was not really a thing. So if you own an FFL, if you own a gun-related company, if you're just interested in helping to protect the Second Amendment rights or defend Article 1, Section 21 of the PA Constitution, if you care about that, we could use your donation for these fights. I tell people, membership is something. If you own a gun and live in Pennsylvania, you should be a member of FOAC, ILLEA. I truly believe that. And it's, for $30 for a yearly membership, of course, we got different levels of membership. It's the best damn $30 you'll spend for your Second Amendment rights. And I guarantee you, we will not squander it We're all volunteer. We put in our time here, and we care about defending the rights of all Pennsylvanians and all the rights. Yeah.
And you get a fancy membership card that I just slaved away making. So we just printed up and packaged up about 200 of those things to get mailed out for all the new members over the last year.
Yeah, so. But we will not send you a Chinese-made leather jacket.
Yes.
Nope. No, sir.
Maybe an American-made keychain, but you know, and even that, you think about it. So we're doing all this work with these statutes, trying to get this legislation stopped, these ordinances in a lot of these places. And you can tell the name's starting to spread. You know, we're getting emails, and I get phone calls from different districts, different folks. One in particular called about a borough called South Coatesville, and they have an ordinance that prohibits discharging of firearms or hunting in South Coatesville. And it came up because the police actually wanted to go out and train in their neighboring borough of Medina, who they also are contracted to police. And they were concerned that they couldn't qualify with their firearms because they have an ordinance that prohibits them from discharging their firearms. So, you know, that's actually being brought up in different places. So right now we're in the let's look and see stage, trying to get the ordinance and, you know, politely ask them, hey, if this is on the books, would you please consider repealing it as a violation of Section 6120, the preemption law in Pennsylvania? We haven't gotten a response from that yet. I think a lot of times these communities get it. I know Medina has maybe 700 some residents. You know, they sort of scramble to get a solicitor and an attorney involved to find out whether they should heed us or what they need to do. But those lawsuits will cost money. As minor as they might seem to be. So that, and we want to go after the big fish too. You were talking about Kim and some of the conversations we had, God rest his soul, but I can't tell you how many times we drove back and forth to Harrisburg and talked about the references on the license to carry forms. They're not permitted by statute. You know, the state police just threw them on there. No statute says you need to ask for references. The sheriff's departments don't like doing it. They don't call them anyway and do a background check on you. So why are residents in Pennsylvania having to put this information down? Some of whom don't have any, because if you read it, it says it can't be a family member. Has to be a reference in the county. And we actually have folks to call and say, look, I moved out here because I didn't want to know everybody. So, and the people I do know are family. I don't have any references, or maybe came in from another state. And they're new here. They don't know anybody. What are you going to do? Ask the guy down at the grocery store, hey, can I put you on as a reference so I can carry a firearm? You know, you shouldn't have to go through that. The statute doesn't allow for it. So,
well, and it's no one's business too, for that matter. I mean,
absolutely.
You know, I work with so many people. Since COVID happened, the whole government lockdown process, there were so many people who did not value their Second Amendment rights prior to that because of the craziness that went on, they do now value it, and they went out and bought a gun. And in a lot of cases, that was them fighting their own inner demons and turmoil. You got to think that's a very admirable thing to do to kind of overcome that fear and inhibition, but they won't dare let a family member know or their friends know, because they don't want to let that be known to other people that maybe are still anti-gun. So why would you put that person in that position by making them get that reference? Especially if they don't, like you said, they don't know anyone in town. That's definitely a thing that happens for some folks.
I get gun customers that come in and they'll tell you they live in, you know, I live in Mount Lebanon, or I live in some of these different communities. And they'll say, if my neighbors knew I collected firearms, you know, it's like a big hush hush thing for them. To others, it's just a matter of safety. It's security for their home, and they don't want people to know they have them in there, thinking, you know, burglars won't target my house if they don't know I've got firearms, things of that nature. So, yeah, it shouldn't be on there. We also brought up the employer information. The Attorney General wasn't too pleased with the inquiry about it.
Well, does that imply then only someone who works should be able to exercise their right?
What if you don't have? Well, first of all, why are they collecting employer information?
Well, yeah, there's that.
So, you know, I mean, where's the agenda here? I mean, if you're worried about me and whether I pass a background check or I'm of character, what difference does it make where I work? Why do you need to know where I work? Is this, you know, the only thing I can think of why you'd want an employment information is if you're looking to find somebody down the road. So why does the government want to know where they can find you? You know, you're giving them your home address. What else do they need? So, you know, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist. I don't jump into, they're tracking us all and all that sort of stuff. But there's a valid question there. Why do you need that information? It doesn't add up. It's not in the statute. It has not. What if you don't have a job?
Yeah.
Can you write unemployed on there? Who are they calling to verify that? So, you know, what difference does it make? But, you know, those are the issues. So that the Attorney General tried to forward me by snail mail, you know, reach out to Lieutenant Keeler at the firearms unit. I don't think he was prepared for me to already be able to know her email address. It's not that complex.
Did they ask for a self-addressed stamped envelope so that you get your return letters?
I could mail it back, to send it by Pony Express. I don't even try to buy time about the issue, but promised me they would have a conversation. And from what I understand, some people I know in the firearms unit said they did get together and have a conversation in the firearms unit amongst the administrators about it, and that it was discussed. But then that was as much information as I was going to be told, of course. But and then all of a sudden, please email it to 1100 Elmerton Avenue, Harrisburg, PA, at the State Police Headquarters. So I replied to his email by including her, Lieutenant Keeler, in the email, and said, "Oh, I appreciate you forwarding me to Lieutenant Keeler." And I just jumped right into it by email instead of sending it through the post. So she replied and said, "We understand this is an issue. It's something we mean to discuss with the Sheriff's Association. And, they're looking into it," is the way I was told. But this, you have to understand, this is going to take time.
Sure.
Well, so I reached out and said, "Okay, I'll call you in 2 weeks. We'll see where we're at." But, what do you mean this is going to take time? It's my understanding that night I sent an email to Sheriff Sloop up in Butler County, who is on both the legislative and executive committees of the Sheriff's Association here in Pennsylvania. And he called me right away. He said, "If you can get this meeting, we've been asking for a meeting with them for a couple months now. So we've been trying to get them to the table to discuss this. We've brought up references. Some of the sheriffs have gone, I guess, to the organization saying how when we teach our concealed carry seminars, we're explaining that it's a violation of the statute for them to ask for references. So it's made some of them uncomfortable. Some of them have decided not to ask for them. Some only ask on the initial, don't ask on renewals. Some, like here in Allegheny County, they're not asking at all. Right. I think Somerset doesn't ask at all, and the sheriffs are looking for guidance on that too, because one of our members reached out from Lawrence County and said they applied for the permit, but they had no references. So they couldn't get it. And she wanted to know what to do. So I reached out to the sheriff up there. I'm not, I don't want to lambaste the guy and make him sound bad, but he actually told me, he goes, "Well, the state police require that." He was of the impression they had to send it. So he's actually asking for guidance from the state police, whether he needs to or not. He told me he would just as soon not, put the information on there, but he's of the impression they want it. So we need to get them together with the sheriffs. Hey, mark the fields as optional on the form if you want to leave them on there.
Yeah.
If people want to fill them out, they can fill out whatever they want. But
then they have freedom of choice at that point in time.
Absolutely. To leave it there like a requirement and make you think you have to do it just to exercise your right to carry a firearm, that's garbage. We all know that.
Yeah. It's like they ask for the Social Security, right? And it says optional. And they're like, sometimes I'll be at an FL, they're like, "Don't you want to put your social in here?" Nope. No, I'm not putting it on there. Well, it may take a little longer. All right, I'll sit and wait.
Well, and it's the thing is, it won't take longer because we find out they're not running it anyway. No. So it's maybe a demographic that they're using to determine you're not one of those prohibited people during the human review. But, in all honesty, I kind of laugh sometimes even thinking about it as I'm filling out the paperwork as an FFL. I'm not giving the government back a number that they gave me in the first place. If they want to know what my number is, they've got it. It's just it's kind of a conflict of interest there. Do you really need this? So it'll make things longer. It's almost like leveraging you to give them the information. But we can argue about constitutional carry as it is. Oh, that's an interesting topic there. There's an organization here in Pennsylvania who is very left-leaning, progressive. It's aimed at women in power in politics, and they routinely invite state representatives and senators to speak in these little Zoom meetings that they do. And I'm on their mailing list. I've used my FOAC ILLEA email address. They send me all their notices anyway, which is fine. But one of the things that they actually talked about is they had they like to use that fake term gun violence because that's the only violence that counts in their eyes. Getting stabbed to death doesn't really qualify you, I suppose. But they had this big conversation with Darisha Parker, state representative, and I've got to look up the senator's name. The senator's name escapes me right now. Amanda Capoletti. And they're both very, very anti-gun. They're screaming that they want mandatory storage and they want mandated reporting and all these things. And they're going back to, we don't have enough gun control, and they think this is going to matter. It's going to stop suicide. So I tried to engage in conversation in the chat a little bit about, lost and stolen, mandated lost and stolen doesn't apply to criminals anyway. You can't punish a prohibited person with it. So all you're doing is looking to hem up law-abiding citizens. Crickets, no answer on that. Mandatory storage is going to save lives. Well, what about the 3,000 or more people that die every state that has it because they're unable to get to their firearms to defend their homes? The crickets, none of that stuff. So I just thought it was interesting, getting off the beaten path here, talking about the things that the government requires from us just to exercise the constitutional right that's ours in the first place. So, interesting twist. If you want to get in there and get frustrated, bang your head against the wall, listen to a bunch of nonsense. The other side of the agenda here definitely has the nonsense side down. So we're going to keep issuing papers.
I've found eavesdropping on some of those things, and even in some cases, just when you're in Harrisburg, there's a couple anti-gun people that I've had the opportunity to actually just sit down and talk to, frankly, and it as much time, effort, and energy you and I put into this, and other people do that are volunteers in our organization and do similar things to what we do in state capitals. It's almost so easy to take it personal when they attack back with their rhetoric, But if you can just kind of separate yourself from that and listen to what they're saying, it really gets you a good idea of what their talking points they're being fed with. And usually they're only like 2 or 3 levels deep. So if you can get them through all of their talking points, and then you see the next guy and you get all of their talking points, and you see they're reading off the same script. So when you do get a chance to sit down and talk to someone that's kind of indifferent, and they're only like listening to the squeakiest wheel, and that squeaky wheel is the anti-gun organization, and you can get them off of their chart, off of their topic list, off of their script, and they don't know how to respond to that. And then maybe that person can be educated and brought around. I know, over the years, Kim Stolf, our previous president, was very proud of some of the people that he turned that were anti-gun. I know you and I have some success stories too. So I think what's important for gun owners to know, especially our members, but anyone else that decides they want to, speak up for our individual right to self-defense, is that it's important that we get out and speak to these people and talk to them. And, we'll find out where they stand. And if we can educate them, great, let's do that. That's ultimately like the best thing. But if we see that they're so far down the pipeline with their rhetoric, their anti-gun, gun control kind of feelings, then, we'll know who our enemy is when it comes to those who are not willing to uphold the Constitution. But also we'll get a good idea what the talking points are, so we can better prepare ourselves when we make those arguments, especially if we're making those arguments with a lot of other people listening. Because that's the thing. You may not convince that person you're talking across the desk from, but everybody else in the hallway listening, that's who we're trying to convince. So I think
think about the education initiatives we have. I mean, the concealed carry seminars that we travel around and do for the state reps and things of that nature. That's all about educating, and we offer them to basically everybody. We offer them to sporting clubs, but we offer them to Republicans and Democrats, whoever wants it. I think we're seeing a change in government now where in years, you go back far enough, the Democrats were the pro-gun party. Mm-hmm. But now if you look around, short of maybe Senator Brewster, Representative Burns, there aren't really a whole lot of Democrats that are pro-gun anymore. Harry Reedshaw was great for it. He was, the old blue dog type Democrat. But that is shifting. The party line doesn't allow that anymore. And you're seeing that the votes come down, not based on whether something's constitutional, other than Frank Burns in the House. They are part and parcel, lockstep, anti-constitution. You can sit there and talk about red flag laws, or ERPOs, extreme risk protection orders, and why they're a violation of due process. They're a clear-cut violation of the Constitution, both of Pennsylvania and the United States. And yet they vote yes, lockstep. You sit in the gallery and you watch them talk about whether it's constitutional or not, and they just plug their ears and pretend like they don't hear the facts and then vote yes on it anyway.
Well, it's either an ideological issue or, this is something you and I have talked about before. People don't want to go against the party because if they do, they won't get supported or funding for their next election. Unfortunately, not all of them, but a lot of elected officials only give a damn about becoming re-elected officials. So if they step outside the box of what the parties tell them to do, they won't get the support. And the anti-constitutionalists especially are very, very keen at eating their own and turning on themselves very quickly. And I think they know that. So we're fighting that as well.
And there's a big example of that in Mark Rossi. So Rossi, they tried to swing him into the middle there, thought maybe we could have an independent as Speaker of the House, which would have been a unique situation. Mm-hmm. An unheard of, really coup of power to take it away from the Democrats at that point. And Rossi was punished so badly, and it had a falling out with the Republican leadership as well. So he was really a man on his own. never really had a chance. I mean, the guy was down to an abacus and a pencil, so it's one of those things where no funding, no staff, no nothing, because they used the funding to punish him and brought him in line. Now look at him. So when we were in the hall last time before the vote on ERPOs and universal background checks, he literally ran away from me down the hallway. I don't know if you were there at that point. He turned and ran down to the elevator. I had to run next to him about, I don't know, how long is the East Wing?
Maybe it's pretty long. Yeah.
Yes, 80 yards, 100 yards, run next to him. And he was stuck at the elevator and couldn't push the button fast enough trying to get away from me when I was asking him, how are you going to vote on these 4 bills?
I was not there for that. I actually would have enjoyed.
Well, we were split. We were split all across the building trying to influence everybody we could. But there you go. I mean, they're ignoring, and a lot of folks, what we do, for those that don't know, we write white papers. So we put out these white papers to help politicians, where we look at it and we go, look, we don't care if you're Democrat, if you're Republican, what party you are. You're either pro-gun or you're anti-gun, and that's where we look. And so we put these white papers out to help the representatives and the senators know what they're actually voting on. And we did one. We did one on ERPOs, red flag laws. We did one on mandatory storage. We did one on universal background checks and armor-piercing ammunition and all the other stuff that's getting brought up to try to strip our rights away. And these aren't just, 2-paragraph opinions. These are 3-4 pages long of supported with facts and research that we're able to pull and provide to these folks. So that
and I'd like to jump in real quick, Jim, on that. You say we make those. I want to make everyone understand that Jim writes all those white papers, at least so far, and he's put a hell of a lot of work into them. They're very, very well done. Very well researched. I
appreciate it, but it's I look at it as us, because you guys tolerate me sending and talking the points and going back and forth and then getting them online. So, I send it to you 800 times for corrections and reviews and get everybody's eyes on them. But the key is we put them on the website there for free for anybody that wants them. We give them out with our memberships now. Our trial memberships are getting and things of that nature, but they're actually under legislation, under state legislation talking points for anyone to download. I'm actually halfway through writing another one now on House Bill 912. I don't know if you're familiar with House Bill 912. We talked about it at our board of directors meeting a little bit. I don't know if I guess we should go over that briefly for folks.
Give the 10,000-foot view on that one.
Yeah, so I received a phone call from a district justice down in Fayette County who was talking about a shooting at a courtroom where an individual came in. He'd been arrested numerous times for violent offenses, including strangulation of his now separated wife. Beyond that now, I suppose, but at the time, separated wife, and you're facing pretty serious felony charges, and this guy's not in jail. He's got a history of criminal conduct, a history of assaults, and the courts don't, bond the guy. They don't put him in because, we have to worry about his feelings and what's fair and all the other nonsense rather than keeping society safe. And so this individual decides that he's going to bring a handgun into the courtroom and open fire to try to kill his soon-to-be ex-wife at that point. What happens is he actually shoots the police officer that opens the door for him. From the news report, shot him in the hand. And then he shoots his ex-wife, shoots another individual in the waiting room, and then shoots another police officer, wounds him, I believe. So he ends up shooting 4 people overall before one of the local officers there in the courtroom guns him down and puts an end to the threat. And at that point, he passes, which is a good thing in my opinion, because the courts probably would have let him on probation because it was only his first set of homicides, But and regardless, he gets stopped that way. And so now the courts are clamoring they want to take away the citizen's right to carry a firearm to the courtroom. So as it stands, you cannot carry a firearm into the courtroom. And we can understand why that would happen. There's a lot of emotion, a lot of passion there. But they are provided by law. They are mandated to provide a lockbox, for you or I or whomever is a law-abiding citizen carrying a gun to and from court. And that's critical to people in Pennsylvania because if you think about it, the law-abiding citizen going to court has probably already been victimized. They're there as a witness or a victim. And maybe that person that victimized them is going to come there and try to do harm to them again. So it's only makes common sense that you want the good guys to be able to be armed coming and going from the courts to protect themselves. Yes. Now, they never did anything. That bill passed in 1992, mandating lockboxes. It was never followed up. I don't know of any courts that have them. So the argument that you get from the district courts is, we're poor, we don't have the funding for it. The Commonwealth courts have it, but the magistrates don't. So they're arguing we don't have the funding for it. We don't even have armed security. You're letting people bring guns to and from the courtroom. We're like, whoa. We're letting them bring them to and from the courtroom as long as they're lawful possessing them. and you give them a place to lock it up. We're not saying you should let them carry it in the courtroom. If that's your rules, that's your rules. That's fine. But now you have this movement, this House Bill 912, trying to take away the right to even have the firearm on your person going to and from the courtroom. So now, does that include in your vehicle? Does it just include when you get out of your car? Where does that statute end? And if I'm intent on coming there, if I'm that guy in Fayette County coming to kill my ex-wife, I don't care what your rule says about whether I can carry a gun with me or not. I'm coming to kill. So if murder isn't scary enough to prevent me, you telling me it's a misdemeanor offense to have a gun on me as I walk to the courtroom isn't exactly frightening.
Yeah, it's interesting. The jails are filled with criminals who just didn't pay any attention to the law. And unfortunately, now the streets are crawling with people that didn't pay attention, that the courts let go.
Well, yeah, some of them tried not to pay attention, and now the court's not paying attention. So that's the worst part. But this was actually a retired police officer who's now a district justice that was trying to push this to me on the phone. And I said, look, if you want FOAC, ILLEA to step up and say they need to fund the lock boxes as the statute requires, I'm with you. If you want us to step up and say that, you need to fund security for the courtrooms to make the courtroom safe for everybody, victims included, and that way we're not talking about taking firearms from law-abiding citizens, I'm with you. But if you're going to come to me and tell me that people who've already been victimized in the Commonwealth cannot carry a firearm to protect themselves when they're lawfully permitted to do so everywhere else within the Commonwealth, just because you have an unsteady feeling that a bad guy might violate that law, no, hell no, we're not doing that. So we'll fight you tooth and nail, and they know it. The pro-guns folks in the House have already spoken. It hasn't made it out of committee yet. It's still in front of the Judiciary Committee. It's going to, Briggs is in charge of that mess, and Briggs could care less what your Constitution says. Briggs is paying. In my opinion, gun control is about pandering for votes and donations. They know that none of these bills are going to save lives, yet they get up there and sprout that it will. They sit and spout that this is going to make a big difference. It's going to prevent suicides. It's going to prevent murders. It's all malarkey to raise money for their campaign trails and generate votes from the uneducated. That's all it is.
So the elected official can become the re-elected official and join the elected class. Yep. Absolutely.
And look at the money behind Ceasefire PA, the money behind every town, these anti-gun organizations. Mm-hmm. They're as anti-constitution as it gets, as far as I'm concerned. You sit there and you listen to this term common sense, right? Common sense to me is abide by the Constitution. That's the common sense, not restrict it. So these are the issues, but there's big money there. There's big money. They bring in bus loads of housewives and retirees and folks that have bought into this. Oh, if we just make people lock their guns up, fewer people will kill themselves. Well, the same people that are locking know the combination because they lock the guns up are the ones killing themselves. It's not going to stop them, and there's nothing that a rope or a knife can't do. So it's, we need to actually address mental health and address the crime problem, but that's time for a different podcast, I suppose, because that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, and there are a lot of venues out there for the gun community, protecting and helping the gun community for folks that have mental health issues or having like low times, like Walk the Talk America and Hold Your Guns, or Hold My Guns rather. So there's a lot of other organizations out there for that. But like you said, maybe that's a good topic for another episode. Before we wrap this up, I thought it would be kind of cool if you and I would just give a quick backstory on how we became involved with FOAC and maybe what that was like for each one of us. Of course, you're the president now. I'm the vice president now, but that happened somewhat recently as our president had stepped down before he passed, Kim Stolfer. But we've been involved with the organization for quite a while. So why don't you just tell everyone like how you got involved, like how you got roped into it and how that started for you.
I got drafted. So ironically, Herb Oliger, who is now, the people have to understand, Institute for Legal, Legislative, and Educational Action sprouted from the Firearms Against Crime Political Action Committee. Herb is still the president of the Political Action Committee. He was a board member or treasurer, I forget which, for the original FOAC PAC when that was all of us, when we were all under one house. And Herb came to me knowing I was a police officer in his district, a veteran and the gun enthusiast that I've always been. And we've had numerous conversations. Herb's very engaged in politics in our area. Mm-hmm. And he more or less recruited me for FOAC, saying, we need someone with a law enforcement background. We need more folks that have this type of background, and et cetera, et cetera. If I'd known it for the sales pitch that it was, but so at that point, I want to say that was maybe 2014 or even 2013. I pitched in a membership because I saw what the organization was doing. It was doing the right thing as far as supporting the Second Amendment here in Pennsylvania. But with the idea that I was going to be one of those distant supporters, I was going to pay attention to the voting records that they were putting out and their guides, and I was going to donate my money, and I'd come down to the gun bashes and bring my friends and family and just have a good time with it. As time went by, it became, hey, you should be on the board. And the first year I was actually put on the board, I wasn't even told. They actually nominated me, and then the vote went. And I got a phone call one day saying, hey, do you accept nomination for the board? I said, what? And we'll take that as a yes, because you just got elected. I'm like, okay, great. And then the path begins where you get more engaged. So as time went by, you and I started pretty much around the same time, and from two different angles, obviously. But Kim really went out of his way to sort of take us both, I think, under his wing in different ways. And for me, it was parading back and forth to the concealed carry seminars, because he felt that my military background with the law enforcement background was ideal to teach certain parts of the seminars, and dragging me back and forth to Harrisburg. And I kind of got the impression he was looking for who would be his replacement, and what roles you and I would have and things of that nature coming down the line. And the introductions began with the politicians, and having me step up and take a more active role. Next thing you know, you're fully up to your neck in the gun bash and a million other things. And I like to tease at the seminars that, for those that knew Kim Stolfer, Kim basically put a gun to my head and said, "You're going to teach these seminars." Well, when his health turned sour back in December, I mean, you remember me giving you a call and saying, "Hey, Kim came to me and he wants to step down." And you and I were both vice presidents, I think, at the time. Chip had moved on to fight the mental health battles and work against the courts and trying to get legislation over on that side of the issue. I was glad that when he made that decision and said, "Hey, I want you to be my follow up here," for lack of a better term, I guess, protege on that topic. Anyway, I was happy that the board, you guys, were all very supportive of that, and I appreciate that. So,
he made the right choice there. You've done an excellent job, and you've been able to dedicate so much time, effort, and energy to this pursuit, much more than I physically could. And with your background and knowledge and your ability to wield your way with elected officials, it's admirable, man. Kim made a great choice, and I support you 110%.
I appreciate it. Well, thankfully, I've got you doing the newsletter and doing a lot of the key things that need done. So it's not a one-man job. And with all the work that you do and the diversity you bring in for your education and background and sportsman's culture, and the way the board is with, we're pretty diverse on the board as far as folks across the state and different backgrounds and experiences. I'm very thankful. So if it was going to happen, there's no replacing Kim. I think we can all agree on that. But if we've got to try to pile in, I'm just glad it's a team effort. Yeah. But tell everybody how you got here. I mean, your trail is a little different than mine. Yeah,
well, I was in Los Angeles for many years. I'm originally from Cameron County, Pennsylvania, but I went out there to work in the film and music industry. And shortly after my son was born, my wife and I decided to come back home. And so we ended up settling in Western Pennsylvania. And I went to a Tea Party rally down at a Bushy Run battlefield. Just was interested. I was seeing what that was all about. And while I was down there, Kim was there. And I believe Ed Steffen, who was volunteering for FOAC at the time. He's also the first VP of Allegheny County Sportsman's League now. They were both there. And I had my son Augie in a little baby carriage. I'm pushing him around, and there's people speaking. And I came over and I'm looking, what's all this about? And Kim was there, and he says, "Well, this is what we do. This is what we do." And he says, "We're always looking for members and volunteers." And I said, "Well, I'd love to get involved and help." And right away, he just got right in my face and he says, "What can you do?" And I said, "I can do this, that, the other thing." He says, "When are you going to do it?" And
way of calling you out.
Yeah. He called me right out. And I think that was something Kim always liked to do, to kind of measure people up. But I actually did call him back, and I did a little bit of like sending emails and stuff like that to legislators and helped out with that. I believe 1 year my membership lapsed, and then I got it back in. But I stayed as active as I could, working with a lot of my other pursuits that I have, especially then when I was solely working for myself. And he approached me. I'm not exactly sure what year it was. He says, "Would you like to be on the board?" And I said, I would love to, and I would love to, take on more responsibility. I said, but I will never make it to a Sunday meeting. Back when we were meeting on Sundays, because at the time that was like, I was always teaching a class or doing a session in the studio, because that was how I kept the lights on. I said, I will never make it to a meeting. If that's okay with you and the rest of the board, I said, I'll accept the possibility to run. And that ended up being okay. But as the years have gone on and my responsibilities have grown and we've done more virtual meetings and stuff, I've obviously been more active with that. But yeah, that's kind of how it got started. And before you know it, a couple years deep, and I'm co-writing some op-eds that got published, and Kim had me writing
your
more
PDN,
stuff.
Yeah, your PDN article this past week.
Oh, very recently, yeah. But as it started, Kim was having me do just like an article or something for the newsletter when he was writing it all the time. And then I don't know, maybe about 2 years ago, he says, I want you to take this over. And that's when I started doing it mostly.
And that says something, because he had a hard time letting things go. So that's volumes of the work he did. And thank God, because I'll tell you what, the one thing that you and I both know doing this is you can pose that question to everybody. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And 9 out of 10 fall away. They're not engaged. They don't follow. They're all talk. So we need the ones that want to be active. And so I'm glad you stepped up there. And that's why we have those signs now I've made at our gun shows and the tables we put. What can you do for the Second Amendment? Because that's the big question, is what can everybody do? How can
here's the thing on that. And I think this is important for everyone to understand, especially our members. No one expects anybody to be a Kim Stolfer. No one expects to put in the time that Jim does, or that I do, or any of the board members do. But what can you do? If it's like, I can send one email out a week, okay, then do it. Or I can raise $50, or I can donate this, or I can go to a seminar, I can help pass out flyers, whatever it is. No one's expecting you to take over the world. But I can tell you this, when you start and do that one thing and it becomes a habit and a routine, a lot of times people are like, I got this. What else can I do? And it helps to set up this chain of events that before you know it, you're a very active participant. And we need all the help we can get. We're looking for good people to help with all aspects of what we do with FOAC. And so even if it's just something small, or you think it's small, hey, if you can do it, let us know, and we'll hold you to it. But if you're consistent, you will help the cause. I guarantee you. If you want to help, there are ways you can help. So,
and folks get more passionate as they go. You get more engrossed in it, and you get more, in the fever of what you're working on, and that makes a big difference too.
Well, the last thing I want to talk about before we kind of close this off, because our file's getting kind of long here. We've got the Gun Bash coming up, so that's on September 30th, right?
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, the Gun Bash is our biggest fundraiser that takes place, and we do 2 of them a year. That's been the tradition. And they're at the Washington County Fairgrounds. The tickets are on sale now. We print 1,000 tickets, and there's 21 guns that go off every 15 minutes is kind of the increments. And there's also a myriad of other guns that go off with like a $5 table, a $3 table. I forget exactly what.
Yeah, 3, 5, and 10. And we gave away over $70,000 worth of guns last time.
Yeah, and our bash is the best damn bash in the Commonwealth. There's one other one that comes close, Castle Shannon. I think that one comes pretty close, but it's not quite the same. And our guns that we have are awesome. I mean, you're not going to get like a Ruger 1022 in this. Not that there's anything wrong with a Ruger 1022, but these are all like high end, really, really awesome guns that
we spend some money.
We spent some money, and the food is fantastic. And if you are so inclined, there's a beer to drink. We give out lots of extra door prizes. I've been kind of goat roped into being the MC, although as you can imagine, I really don't have a hard time talking in front of people. I kind of like the sound of my voice, so it was a good fit. So I call the numbers, and I call them correctly 99% of the time. And when I mess one up, it upsets people in the hall. But it's September 30th. Tickets are on sale now. And once the tickets run out, which they will, because it's a pretty popular thing.
Sells out every time.
Yeah, we still have $25 tickets on the day. So if you want to buy an entry ticket, you can still do the side raffles and the pick at the table things and have food and enjoy the fun and fellowship. You just wouldn't have access to the 21 that are on the ticket itself. But if you'd like to see the ticket and see the guns on there, they're on the website. If you go on the website under Gun Bash, you can see the ticket, the guns that are on there, and you can purchase a ticket right there. Or some of the normal sellers, there's different stores around, and some the members that typically sell tickets, face to face. But you can get them right off the website.
Looking forward to it. It's going to be a good time. And this year, you yelled at me last year, I need to be more presidential. So this year, I'm going to work on being more presidential, getting out and circulating a little bit more. So I'm looking forward to it. I think we're going to have another great one.
I may have them play Hail to the Chief when you come up and speak.
I don't know that we're ready for that. The world's not ready for that.
Okay, well, I'll come up with something nice. Yeah, something nice.
All right, cool. Great.
Well, this was fantastic, Jim. I'd like to tell everyone that we're going to do this on some type of regular interval. Not sure what that interval will be, but ultimately we'll probably have guests on here, maybe members that want to talk about some of the things they're doing. Maybe some of the volunteers might be on here. But Jim and I, or Jim or I, depending on the dichotomy of the day, will be on here more often and posting these videos so you can keep up to date with what we're doing. If you want to become a member or any of the other information you want to do, it's FOAC-ILLEA.org. I'll make sure that's on the graphics below. Jim, you're the president, so I'll give you the opportunity to close things out.
Great. Looking forward to it. Maybe we can try to start doing something bi-weekly. Every other week we'll get together and put some information down. I got my hands full with legislation and whatnot, obviously, but this is a great way to get the word out for folks so they know what's happening in Harrisburg. And great pushing them to the website, too, because they get those emails if they sign up to find out what's happening every day. We send out about the legislation that's being proposed or the arguments that are going on in Harrisburg. And there's nothing better than an educated voter because we'll win that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, sir.
Gang. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. And everybody out there in FOAC, we'll catch up with you real soon.
All right. Bye.